You think acting as if everything is in your favor is a technique. It isn't. That is exactly the confusion that stalls the manifestation of most people who have studied Neville Goddard for years and see nothing change in their external reality. They turn a principle of identity into a mental performance, a stage play, a script of internal gestures that must be repeated until the universe, exhausted, delivers what was requested. And then you enter a cruel loop. The more you try to act as if, the more the body feels it is acting. The more the body feels it is acting, the more the nervous system sends the signal that it is not yet true. And the more that signal emanates from you, the more the field returns the same reality as always, only now with an extra layer of spiritual frustration on top. In the next few minutes, you will understand exactly what the biological error is that is blocking your manifestation, why the uncertainty you try so hard to silence is, in fact, the only thing that reveals who you really believe you are, and what Neville meant, at the most literal and neurological level possible, when he stated that faith is the substance of things hoped for. This is not motivational. This is surgery. If you stay until the end, you won't leave this video with hope. You will leave with responsibility, and that is what was missing. Let's start from the most uncomfortable place, because that is where true change happens. There is a specific period between the moment you decide what you want to manifest and the moment external reality begins to reflect it. This period has a technical name, uncertainty, and it is precisely in this period that 90% of people break, not because the manifestation wasn't coming, but because their bodies couldn't withstand the absence of proof. Pay attention to this, because this is where most manifestation teachings fail to be honest with you. Uncertainty is not an obstacle in the way. Uncertainty is the examination. It is the only moment when your unconscious is forced to show who you truly believe you are, without the mediation of external reality. When there is evidence, it's easy. When the money has come in, it's easy to trust. When the person has called you, it's easy to feel love. When the opportunity has appeared, it's easy to vibrate in possibility. That is not faith. That is reaction. That is your nervous system responding to a confirmatory stimulus and producing the emotional state coherent with that stimulus. A dog does that. A plant does that. There is no merit in that. The real question is, who are you when there is no confirmatory stimulus? Who are you in the void? Who are you in the silence between the decision and the manifestation? Because that is the only identity the field sees. Neville spoke about this with a precision that only makes sense now, with what neuroscience has discovered about the predictive brain. He said that the external world is the faithful mirror of the state assumed internally. Not the desired state, not the imagined state, not the affirmed state, the assumed state. And assumed has a very specific biological meaning. It is the state that your nervous system treats as a fait accompli, with all the corresponding physiological responses, the heartbeat of someone who already has it, the breathing of someone who already has it, the posture of someone who already has it, the muscle tone of someone who already has it, the pattern of automatic thoughts of someone who already has it. When uncertainty arrives, it tests exactly that. It removes all external crutches and asks, without proof, what are you? Most people discover with horror that without proof they are exactly the same person they have always been, the one who needs confirmation to exist, the one who can only vibrate in abundance after the bank statement confirms it, the one who can only feel loved after the other person calls, the one who only feels secure after the problem is solved. And it is precisely this person that the field continues to reflect, cycle after cycle, year after year, decade after decade, because the field does not respond to your intentions, it responds to your identity signature. And your identity signature is revealed not in the moment of certainty, but exactly in the moment when certainty should be absent, and you choose to maintain it anyway. Every automatic thought that arises during your period of uncertainty is a confession. Every time you pick up your phone to see if the message has arrived, you are confessing that you are not yet the person who has that message. Every time you mentally recalculate whether it will work out, you are confessing that you are not yet the person who has the result. Every time you repeat to yourself, it will work out, it will work out, it will work out, you are confessing at a biological level that it hasn't worked out yet, Because whoever already has it does not affirm. Whoever already has it simply is. Repeated affirmation is the admission of absence, and the field reads this admission as your real request. Now comes the painful part. You will not get out of this state by trying to control your thoughts. You will not get out of this state by forcing positive affirmations onto a nervous system that is screaming scarcity. And this is where most of Neville's teachers commit the pedagogical crime of omitting the most important part of the process. Choosing a state before the evidence appears is not a mental act. It is an act of embodiment. It is a biological act. It is a nervous system act. You need to understand this with clinical coldness, because this distinction separates those who manifest from those who spend their entire lives studying manifestation. Real faith, the kind that Neville called substance, is not a belief. Belief is a concept. Belief is language. Belief is the most superficial layer of your mind, and the layer that the field hears the least. Faith is a bodily state. It is the body responding to the chosen reality as if it already existed, even while your eyes still see the old reality. It is the decision that your nervous system will emit the energetic signature of the outcome before any particle of that outcome has materialized on the physical plane. This is violently unnatural for the common human brain because the human brain was designed to be reactive. It evolved to scan the environment, detect threats, generate emotional states coherent with the environment, and optimize survival. It was not designed to create emotional states dissociated from the environment. This is an act of superior will. This is literally what separates creative consciousness from reactive consciousness. And that is why Neville insisted so much on the word assume. You do not believe in the state. You assume the state. To assume is a bodily verb. To assume is a shift in tonus. To assume is the shoulder that relaxes because the person who already has it carries no tension regarding that matter. To assume is the breath that deepens because the person who already has it does not live in a state of vigilance. To assume is the face that softens because the person who already has it does not need to prove anything. To assume is the thought about the matter that simply stops appearing, because nobody thinks obsessively about something that is already a fact. You don't think all the time that you have two legs. You have two legs, period. It is this type of internal silence, this obscene naturalness with possession, that characterizes embodied faith. And this is what the field reads. This is what reorganizes the external reality around you, not your will, not your effort, not your manifestation spreadsheet. The naturalness with which your body treats the new reality, as if it were as banal as the floor beneath your feet. The great mistake is to keep trying to feel emotion about the manifestation, to keep trying to vibrate in gratitude, to keep trying to force enthusiasm. This is all noise. The person who already has it does not vibrate in enthusiasm all the time about what they have. They vibrate in normality, in belonging, in obviousness. This is the secret that almost no one verbalizes. The highest frequency of manifestation is not euphoria, it is banality. It is the moment when that which you wanted so much becomes so common in your internal landscape that you stop commenting on it even to yourself. And then, invariably, it appears in the physical plane. Because the physical plane is merely the delayed projection of what your nervous system has already accepted as a permanent state. This is where I need to tell you a truth. And this truth will make sense especially to you who have already read Neville, have listened to 20 different audios about creative imagination, have tried the SATS method, have done visualization before sleeping, and yet watch the months go by without your external reality shifting the way it should. The problem isn't you. The problem is that your nervous system has been trained for decades to operate on a specific baseline, a frequency it considers home. And every time you try to assume a new state, this nervous system pulls you back to the old baseline in minutes or hours or days. That is why the feeling of being rich lasts 20 seconds before the anxiety returns. That is why the feeling of being loved lasts for one night before the neediness returns. You aren't having a problem with faith. You are having a problem with residence. You visit the new state, but you live in the old one. And that is exactly why I prepared the Imam da Prosperidad for you. It's not a course, it's not a method. It's a 28-day journey designed based on a simple and brutally effective principle. Your nervous system needs rhythmic repetition in specific brainwaves to abandon the identity of scarcity and adopt the frequency of real abundance on the spiritual, emotional, and financial level. 28 days is the minimum time required for your body to stop treating the new identity as an exaggeration and start treating it as the baseline. As long as you don't perform this deep reprogramming, you will keep visiting the state of possession and returning to poverty like someone returning home. All the instructions for you to start the journey are in the first pinned comment right below. If you have understood that the problem is not a lack of knowledge, but a lack of embodiment, comment now the phrase "Eu assumo o novo estado." This comment is not for me. It is a command you are giving to your own unconscious. Write it with your chest, not with your finger. Now that you have understood that assuming is a bodily verb, we need to talk about the abysmal distance between desiring and embodying. This distance is where most manifestations die, without the practitioner ever realizing they died for this reason. Desiring is a linguistic and emotional activity. You draw an image in your mind, you feel something in relation to that image, you formulate sentences about that image. All of this happens inside a mental theater that your nervous system recognizes immediately as theater. It knows you are imagining, it knows you are desiring, it knows that is a projection, and it responds with a micro-secretion of dopamine, that soft feeling of possibility, that illusion that you are already walking toward manifestation. And that is where the trap closes. Because this micro-sensation of progress is precisely what prevents real change. You leave the imagination session thinking you have done something, but your nervous system hasn't moved a millimeter from the old baseline. You remain the same person. You are just the same person with a pretty image in your head. Embodying is radically different. Embodying means that your body begins to operate in day-to-day life under the internal logic of the person who already has it. This has nothing to do with pretending you have it. Pretending is a conscious performance that requires effort, and all effort betrays absence. Embodying is the decision to allow your daily behavior to be reorganized from within. How do you eat breakfast when you are the person who has financial peace? You eat differently. You chew differently. You look at the cup differently. How do you answer the phone when you are the person, beloved and desired? You answer differently. You speak with a different tone. How do you walk down the street when you are the person whose life is always in your favor? You walk differently. Your gaze is different. The way you sit in your office chair is different. This is not posture. It is frequency translated into biology. Neville insisted that most people alternate, and this word is key. They imagine the new state for 20 minutes in the morning and spend 14 hours embodying the old state. Then they wonder why the manifestation doesn't happen. My friend, 14 hours of embodiment beat 20 minutes of imagination every day of the week. The field reads the total score, not the score of chosen moments. And the total score of your average day is still the score of the old version of you. That is why the ancient mystics spoke of initiatory death. It was not a poetic metaphor, it was a technical description. To embody a new identity, it is necessary for the old one to die. And to die here means to stop being summoned as a reference for response. Every time a new situation arises in your day, your brain consults an internal file called "Who am I in this type of situation?" And it responds automatically based on the old file, even if you meditated in the morning affirming you are someone else. As long as the file is not rewritten, you will continue to react from the old place. And the reaction is the signature that the field reads, not the affirmation, the reaction. How do you react to a bill that arrives? How do you react to a client who cancels? How do you react to an unexpected silence from the person you love? It is there in the instant reaction, in the thousandth of a second before the conscious filter kicks in, that your real identity is recorded and sent to the field. That is why those who want to manifest need to stop working on the mind and start working on the reactions. What you do with your eyes closed is worth much less than what you do with your eyes open in the middle of the chaos, when no one is watching, when you think you are off duty. That is where true manifestation happens or doesn't happen. That is where you prove to your own nervous system who you are. Notice one thing. O imán da prosperidad works exactly on this point, in the exact format, to reprogram reaction, not affirmation. The link with all the information is in the first pinned comment. If you have already understood that the problem is reaction and not affirmation, this is the time to make the decision that most people postpone for another 10 years. Now I need to call you to a stranger, more delicate and probably more uncomfortable place than you imagine, because there is an invisible addiction that consumes almost everyone who studies manifestation. It is the addiction to seeking signs. It is the addiction to interpreting coincidences. It is the addiction to constantly looking for confirmations that the manifestation is coming. And here things get surgical, because this addiction disguises itself as spirituality. It disguises itself as connection with the universe. It disguises itself as I am reading the signs. But it is, functionally, the most destructive thing for your manifestation. Notice the mechanism. When you need a sign, you are confessing that alone without a sign you cannot sustain the state. You are confessing that your internal identity is too fragile, too dependent, too subordinate to external reality. And the field, obedient as it is, gives you back exactly the experience of someone who depends on external signs to know who they are. In other words, more ambiguous events that require interpretation, more oscillating reality, more weak confirmations followed by strong doubts. It is the spiritual hell of the manifestation practitioner. They spend their whole life interpreting little signs on the road without ever realizing that the road only exists because they decided to walk on it. Neville was brutal on this point. He said that those who demand proof before believing will never truly believe. And believing for him meant that bodily state of assumption that we have been talking about from the very beginning. Proof is the last thing to appear. Proof is the echo. Proof is the effect. If you are waiting for the effect to assume the cause, you have inverted the entire process. You have become a consumer of reality, when your role was to be its generator. There is a neurological mechanism that explains this with frightening precision. The human brain functions as a predictive system. It constantly generates hypotheses about reality and then checks those hypotheses against the data that the senses bring in. If you enter any situation with the internal hypothesis, I am prosperous, I am loved, everything works in my favor, the brain literally reorganizes perception to confirm this hypothesis. It begins to notice opportunities that were previously invisible. It begins to interpret interactions more generously. It begins to behave in a way that generates more favorable responses from the environment. It is not magic. It is the deepest architecture of how human consciousness constructs the perceived world. Now, if you enter the same situation with the internal hypothesis, I wonder if it will work out. I wonder if he likes me. I wonder if the money will come. The brain does exactly the opposite. It scans the environment looking for signs that it might not work out. It notices ambiguous facial expressions and interprets them as negative. It behaves tensely, and the environment returns tension. And so the external world becomes, literally, a faithful mirror of the internal hypothesis. Neville called this creative imagination. Modern neuroscience calls this predictive processing. It is the same phenomenon described in two different languages. And the addiction to seeking signs is the disease of this process. Because every time you seek a sign, you are admitting that your internal hypothesis is not yet solid. You are letting the result of the hypothesis depend on what external reality will provide, and the brain, upon perceiving that the hypothesis is still being tested, does not install it as a default. It remains in evaluation mode. And as long as it is in evaluation mode, it does not generate the reorganizing effect it would if it were installed as fact. Do you want to manifest? Then you need to understand that seeking signs is the opposite of manifestation. Seeking signs is anti-manifestation. Every sidelong glance at the phone waiting for a reply is a vote against you. Every compulsive tarot reading to see if it's coming is a vote against you. Every question to a friend asking if they think it will work out is a vote against you. Not because these things are bad in themselves, but because the internal attitude that motivates them is an attitude of doubt, of checking, of subordinating your identity to the external verdict. And as long as you need the external verdict to know who you are, the external verdict will continue to be what it has always been. There is a phrase by Neville that summarizes this and should be iron engraved on the wall of everyone who studies this subject. Do not ask, be. Do not ask for prosperity, be prosperity. Do not ask for love, be love. Do not ask for the result. Be the version of yourself that already has the result. And to be here is that biological act of bodily assumption that we talked about. It is not a motivational quote. It is a technical instruction for neurological reprogramming. Once you are, the external world loses its relevance as a source of information. You stop reading the signs because you yourself have become the sign. You stop waiting for confirmations because you yourself have become the confirmation. You stop asking if it will work out, because in your internal reality it already has, and external reality is just a format of time that will eventually catch up to this truth. This is the detachment that Neville spoke of. It is not indifference. It is not cold detachment. It is the absurd naturalness of one who already knows. And here we arrive at the most unknown, most misunderstood, and most transformative phenomenon of the entire process: the phenomenon of rest. There is a specific moment in your manifestation process in which something changes inside you, and you stop feeling urgency. You stop feeling anxiety. You stop needing to control. You stop checking. You stop asking. You stop chasing. And the strangest thing, you stop feeling that intense desire that drove you in the beginning. And here, many practitioners get scared. They interpret this change as a loss of focus. They wonder if they are giving up. They try to force the intense feeling of wanting back, thinking that without this intensity, the manifestation won't come. And it is precisely the opposite. This loss of urgency is the most precise physiological sign that the manifestation has been accepted internally. It is the moment when your nervous system, after so much reprogramming effort, has finally adopted the new identity as a baseline. And when something becomes a baseline, you stop thinking about it. You simply stop. No one wakes up in the morning obsessively thinking that they have 2 arms. You have them, and that's it. The same applies to the assumed manifestation. When it is truly assumed, it becomes mundane in your inner landscape. It no longer keeps you awake at night. It no longer makes your heart race. It no longer makes you check your bank statement 10 times a day. You reach a state of rest that confuses the rational mind. You think, am I giving up? Am I settling? Have I lost faith? And the answer is no. You have just embodied faith. You have just exited desire mode, which is a mode of absence, and entered possession mode, which is a mode of presence. And the external reality, which only reflects what is already present within you, begins to reorganize itself to confirm that presence. The people around you begin to treat you differently without you understanding why. Opportunities begin to appear without effort. Money starts arriving through unexpected routes. Love approaches without you chasing it. And most shocking of all, when things start to happen, you are not in ecstasy. You are at peace, because your nervous system had already accepted it. The materialization is just the final formality of something that already was. This is what Neville called the end consummated. It is the inner state in which the outcome is treated as past, not as future. And the peace that accompanies this state is the biological marker of manifestation in progress. There is no true manifestation without this peace. If you are still anxious, if you are still checking, if you are still asking, you haven't assumed it yet. You are still negotiating, and as long as you are negotiating, the field interprets that the deal has not yet been closed. Many people confuse this peace with apathy. It is not apathy. Apathy is the absence of life. The peace of the end consummated is the absolute presence of life, but without the agitation of lack. It is the difference between someone walking through the desert dying of thirst and someone sitting by the river drinking water. Both are calm, but one is calm because they have given up, and the other is calm because they already have it. You need to learn to distinguish this within yourself with rare honesty. Are you at peace because you gave up, or are you at peace because you already are? The answer to this question is the most precise diagnosis of your process that exists. If you are at peace because you gave up, The body has a heaviness, it has a resignation, it has a colorless color. If you are at peace because you already are, the body has a lightness, a silent confidence, a discreet glow that doesn't need to announce itself. It is this second state that attracts the corresponding reality, and it is this second state that almost no one can sustain alone without a rigorous daily reprogramming practice, because the nervous system, left to its own devices, always tends to return to the anxiety that is its familiar baseline. This is the reason why I insist so much that most people who study manifestation need an external structure to support the new state until it becomes internal. This is what the Imo da Prosperidad is for. 28 days of specific soundtracks, nightly commands, breathing rhythms, and identity signatures that work precisely on this point, installing the peace of possession as the new baseline of your nervous system, so that you stop visiting the state of abundance and start living in it. It is the only way to ensure that the peace you feel is the peace of "it is already done," and not the peace of "I give up." All the information to join the journey is in the first pinned comment. If you close this video without making this decision, understand that tomorrow morning your nervous system will wake up exactly the same way it woke up today and will emit exactly the same signature as always to the field. You will continue to be read by the universe as the same person, and the external reality will continue to be the faithful mirror of that person. Decide now if you want to continue being that person or not. So we reach the final turning point, and this point is simultaneously the simplest and the most difficult of all, becoming the person that reality needs to reflect. Not temporarily, not in meditation sessions, not in manifestation journals, permanently, as a fixed identity, as a new resting pattern, as a new self. Neville called this assuming the desire as fulfilled. Neuroscience calls this the consolidation of a new predictive identity. Both languages describe the same internal collapse, the moment you stop trying to be and simply are. And here comes the part that almost no one has the courage to say. This process is not about ignoring difficulties. It is not about denying problems. It is not about pretending that the bill that arrived didn't arrive, that the illness doesn't exist, that unemployment isn't real. That would be spiritual bypass, and the field reads bypass as weakness, as evasion, as a refusal to inhabit reality. What Neville proposed was radically different. It was remaining faithful to the chosen identity while the external world still presents the old landscape. It is not ignoring the old landscape. It is simply not drawing your identity from it. It is looking at the bill that arrived without your nervous system collapsing into the identity of someone who cannot pay. It is looking at rejection without your nervous system collapsing into the identity of someone who is unloved. It is looking at the absence of results without your nervous system collapsing into the identity of someone who has failed. This is embodied faith. This is fidelity to the chosen state. This is being the person that reality needs to reflect. And when you sustain this fidelity for long enough, something happens that the rational mind cannot quite explain, but that everyone who has experienced it recognizes immediately. The external reality begins to yield, first in small adjustments, then in strange coincidences, then in larger movements, then in transformations that, looking back, seem like miracles, but they are not miracles. They are the inevitable result of you having changed the identity signature that the field was reading. The external world is slow. It takes time to update the mirror, but it always updates, always, because it has no choice. It is not an entity that decides whether or not to give to you. It is a reflection mechanism, a mirror, and the mirror does not decide. The mirror only reflects. Your task is not to convince the mirror. Your task is to change who is standing in front of it. And that is where you need to stop once and for all and pay attention to what I'm about to tell you, because this is the closing not of the theoretical part, but of your responsibility in this matter. You can close this video now and tomorrow morning wake up exactly as you woke up today, with the same nervous system, the same automatic thought patterns, the same automatic reaction patterns, the same emotional baseline, the same energetic signature, and your next month will be statistically identical to the previous one, with small variations that will not change the deep structure of your life. Or you can understand that the line between the version of you that continues to be the same and the version of you that finally embodies the new. Identity is not a line of effort, it is a line of decision. It is the decision to install within your body, your rhythm, your breathing, and your unconscious, the signature of who you already are. And this installation requires repetition, it requires rhythm, it requires daily practice in a format capable of bypassing the rational mind to reach the unconscious, where your true identity dwells. All of this is structured within the Emo da Prosperidade, and the link with all the instructions is in the first pinned comment. I'm not telling you this to sell to you. I'm telling you this because, after everything you've understood in this video, it would be cruel to leave you alone with the information, but without the tool. You know too much now to pretend you don't, and knowing without acting is the worst place a person can be. It is the spiritual purgatory of the modern practitioner. Pay attention to this closing. You reached this point not by chance. You reached it because some part of you, much deeper than the rational mind, recognized that it was time to stop. Stop acting like someone who is waiting. Stop acting like someone who is in need. Stop acting like someone who is checking. Stop acting like someone who suffers for the absence of what is already yours by right of an assumed identity. What Neville taught you, what neuroscience has confirmed, and what this whole conversation has revealed, points in a single direction. You do not receive what you want. You receive what you are. And what you are is chosen in the silence of the hours when no one is watching, in the automatic reactions you let pass without editing, in the thoughts you repeat without noticing, and in the biological signature that your nervous system emits 24 hours a day. If you want external reality to change, this is what must change. Not your willpower, not your effort, not your strategy, your signature. And your signature only changes when your nervous system changes. And your nervous system only changes with practice that is rigorous, rhythmic, embodied and repeated, long enough for the new identity to become home. If you have understood this, comment now with the phrase "Eu sou que uma realidade precisa refletir." Write it not as an affirmation, but as a declaration of an assumed state. Write it as someone signing a contract with themselves. Because every time your mind tries to pull you back to the old identity, this comment will return as an anchor. And the anchor is not for me, it is for you. If you continue to be the same person tomorrow, this video was just another session of content. If you start to be someone else from now on, this video was a turning point. The choice is not mine, the choice was never anyone's but yours. It has always been yours. It continues to be yours. It will continue to be yours until the very last breath you take. The difference is that now you can no longer pretend you didn't know. Decide.